White guilt.
Let's talk about it.
I'm in.
Oh.
All right. So a lot of comments that have come up where people like, we talk about, black people or African American people having a hard time and not catching up, and then what people well, my ancestors are Irish and we were, discriminated against, or I'm Native American, and that's like a whole huge other thing. But there's a lot of other ethnicities, groups of people that obviously we have discriminated against.
Yep.
So what do you say to people, like, you can't even get out information about white privilege or other stuff before people are like, well, I might be white, but I'm Irish and my, blah, blah, blah. So, like, what information can you say to that?
Yes. When your folks came over on the boat as Irish people, you were treated like total crap. Not deny. In fact, I'm sure, just like in the stories that we're sharing, there's stuff we have no idea about. It's horrible. The odds this moment that if you walked in front of me going, that guy's Irish, is probably pretty slim. And this goes back to the ability to pass, right? That's the first thing. The second thing is that most people didn't carry that with them for long. So, yes, there are still people who, someone's parents are like, oh, I'm dating an Irish guy from there, like the Irish, right? There's still some of that, but not so much. And some of that is because the Irish as a group get to blend in. Not only, but that's a big part of it, right? The shitty things that happened with the Irish were, again, terrible, but they're not repeated regularly. They happened for roughly a generation. This is not true if you're a ginger. We know this. We know that redheads get treated like crap still.
What?
You never heard about that?
No!
You ever heard the term treated like a redheaded stepchild?
No!
You never heard that?
Apparently I have not!
Ooh, they don't talk about that, y'all in Canada, I guess.
I guess not.
Yeah.
I mean, no,
Well, I started dyeing my hair when I moved to America.
No, there you go. See? Because you thought it was a privilege.
Well,
stuff.
whatever.
Anyway, whatever.
But, okay, but so to add to that is, like, when you go back to the 50s, the 40s, whatever, like, they didn't have two different water fountains that said the
Boom.
Irish and the whites.
Thank you.
Right.
It's,
Thank you.
So,
Because even if they did, if you were Irish, you could
were
just
white.
not go to it.
Yeah.
Right? There's no hiding. If they're like,
Right.
Yep.
white, black water fountain, I can't just slip on over.
Thank
Yeah, if
you.
you're Irish, you got to sit in the front of the bus.
Right.
Right?
You
so,
got
like,
to do the things.
yeah.
Unless you had an accent, right? If you had a thing, and at that time,
Even
you
then,
had a
in the
thing, right?
50s, you
Right.
would sit in the frickin' front of the
Just sit in the front
bush.
and just don't
Bush.
say anything.
Oh,
In the bush.
no.
Boom.
Oh,
Bush.
dear.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
But, yeah, okay.
So I think that's a big part of it. So you're right. You're 100% right. There are, and again, there's someone who has those reparation numbers. We're not saying you shouldn't get them either. Maybe not as much, right? Maybe the issue that you had was shorter lived. You probably don't have to worry about your kid in class because he's the only kid with some Irish blood in a school full of people who were English and Scottish, right? Like, this isn't a thing that you were your kid. You're not like, oh God, I sure hope my kid doesn't get stopped because he's Irish. That's not a thing, right? But it was a thing at one point for sure. And I think that there are a lot of people who don't know that, right? Oh, I've heard some stories, and I barely get the tip of the iceberg. So, yeah, you're right.
But again, that was, like, yeah, we don't want to say, like, it didn't happen, it isn't true, but it was much more short-lived and very different than, like, in the 50s, this is a true story, and maybe it was even in the 60s, where a woman, a black nanny for a white child, was at the pool. The girl was it was a pool for only white people. The girl was drowning. No one was paying attention. The nanny jumped into the pool to save the child. They had to drain the pool because a black person jumped into the pool. Like, that is not happening for an Irish person in the 60s.
Right.
And the woman saved the child.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Listen,
I mean-
even Dorothy Dandridge, gorgeous Dorothy Dandridge, she stuck her toe in a pool and it had to be drained. Gorgeous. She's like the Halle Berry of back in the day, basically. And Halle Berry played her.
I mean, you'd be
She
lucky
stuck
to get her
her-
DNA.
Right? Good Lord.
Yeah.
People
Right.
be like, yes, please, right?
Like,
Yeah.
So yeah, and
Bathe
again,
with
there
her.
was probably a time where that would have been the case for the Irish, right? If the Irish walked into a bar, had a sip of beer, and was like, "Oh no, we gotta clear out the taps," that might have actually been a thing, but not generally speaking, not for that long, and not still. And I think that's because it's not this thing that, even if you were Irish and believed yourself that you were less than, it is a simple thing to just pretend to not be and other people wouldn't notice. Right. There is a much bigger difference when everyone sees the difference and that difference is seen as bad. And I think that is where, again, we know that Americans were at one point, right? I think that should be the name of Americans. Gross. That's
no.
But I think
That's
that's
we have hope.
Yeah, exactly.
Because I do think that some people that are commenting are feeling like we're just like dissing on Americans and people, and like that's not what this is about.
No.
This is just an open conversation because we believe in America. We believe in change. We believe in like working together as Americans to bring all of us up to a higher place.
And we like the Irish comment.
Yes.
Because people listening to this will be like, the Irish, what's wrong with the Irish? And they will hopefully go do some research
Do the history,
and
do
see
learn.
the things that happened to the Irish when they came over and the way they were treated and the signs that were up. And this was also a horrible thing. But if we had a talk that was like, oh, the Irish, what a bad time. People would be like, Irish, and then they just move on and this conversation never comes out. Hopefully now people are learning something about it. So
Do the research.
yeah, absolutely.
And don't you feel it's just like the whole bigger picture is like us and them, whoever the us and them is, like the, and that's where the white supremacists come in, or the misogyny, like men against women. Like, if we could just figure out, like, we're just humans.
Yeah.
We're just Americans. We are people, and we struggle, and we all have struggles, and some of us have more struggles because of different reasons, but, like, the idea of us and them, that's the...
Yeah, and there's two sides to this, man. Look, if someone I know is cancer, just 2 months to live, like in pain regularly, and they tell me about it, me saying, cancer, I had the flu last week and it was just, you're not the only person that's sick, that sort of but also let's note that if you have cancer, that doesn't mean that someone else's sickness also doesn't matter. This goes both ways, and I think it's important that even though we're talking about white guilt typically from the lens of African Americans, we're not saying that the other shit didn't matter too, right? We're just talking about that thing that has been the most prominent, the thing that can be at its most detrimental these days. But it is also shining a light on all those things, bringing up cancer, right? Cancer research, there are cancers that if you get them, like there's little hope. But because we're working on those, there are also cancers that we can get rid of pretty quick, and you don't have to think about it again, right?
Breast cancer survivor, lumpectomy, done. Oops,
done, right? Some skin cancers, I know people that have had like 3, and they're like, oh God, I gotta get rid of it, and then done. Again, we're not saying that it's not bad. We're just saying that it's not as bad as colon cancer, right?
My dad died of colon cancer.
Yeah, right? So these are things that we don't say, oh, colon cancer, we can't deal with any other cancers. We're not saying that even remotely. In fact, we should. And because of all the work going into this, we're able to start to heal and actually fix a lot of them. We're hoping that conversations like this help, right? Irish guy or woman, you're probably okay right now. But if there are still things that I don't know about and the Irish are still being treated like crap, this conversation actually puts that out there. And if it's true, put it in the comments
Please
because
put it
we
in the
want to
comments.
know,
We want to
right?
know.
This is a big thing.
Yeah.
Listening to the guy that was 25% Native American, I didn't know that they couldn't vote until the late 70s. Like, I was born then, and I didn't realize that was a thing, right?
Yeah.
We're learning, and all of this stuff is going to help with that.
Yeah.
I'm so glad you said you didn't know, but you were born in the 70s. So I was born in the 60s. And what is so crazy to me when people say, oh, all that stuff, Dr. King, you know the tricky part? They always show pictures of Dr. King, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., Reverend Doctor, black and white.
In black and white.
As
like
if
it
it
was
was
from the
so
20s.
long ago. He was killed in April of 1968. I was born in 1968.
Yes.
So you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
My mom was carrying me. Like, I could have been named April if she would have had a miscarriage based on, she was so freaked out that the fact that the most sweetest, most peaceful black man in America was killed. If he's killed, what are they going to do to us?
Right.
Do you understand? My
Yeah.
mother was carrying me when that happened.
Yeah.
So it's just like how some people know exactly where they were when JFK was assassinated. My mother knows exactly where she was when Martin Luther King, when she found out that he was assassinated. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So all these things about oh, it happened so long ago or whatever. Like you said, it's not just about slavery. It's about stuff that happened right in my lifetime.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's one thing. Now, can I jump into something too
Yeah.
about the thing about Irish or different different nationalities, whatever? I think everybody should do a DNA test. When you do a DNA test, you'll see a lot of different things that you didn't know.
Oh, yeah. That's true.
England is in my thing. Germany is in my thing. But, I had like a whole list of stuff that, I'm mostly Nigerian. But
Wow.
I'm also part Filipino, part German, England, Scotland, Wales. Ironically, those are the places that I actually visited when I used to play with the little English handbell choir, and we did that little tour. But whatever. But I'm just saying.
Did you say English handbell?
I was in an English handbell. I'm going to send you the picture so you can put the thing on there. Of course, I was the only black person in it. You know I was. The only black
soon as you said English handbell choir, I assumed.
yes. And we went to Europe. So I'm going to give you the picture so you can insert that in there. But you understand what I'm saying? So once you know your DNA, then you'll see all these other things. How am I going to be racist against that 1% of me that's German, that 1% of me that's British, that 1% of me that's whatever? Now, another thing, going way, way back, anthropologist Leakey says that all of us came from Africa.
You're trying to get us canceled now.
Do your research. Anthropologist Leakey says the earliest human bones on Earth were in Africa. That means we are all African. I'm just going to let that land.
Oh, yikes.
Okay.
You gotta comment on that one.
Comment. Put it in the comments.
Bring it.
Adam and Eve.
Fight
could've
me.
been from
Fight
Africa.
me. Bring it. Fight me.
This could have been Hawaiian, I heard. I don't know why
So, give me personal stories. Real personal stories. How have you felt the sting of racism in your life?